katika kazi yangu ya utafiti, ni matumaini yangu kwamba itapanua wigo wa uelewani kuhusu Afrika na watu wa Afrika. Well, I've been speaking in two African indigenous languages, Swahili and Kimeru. And what I'm saying is that I'm happy to be here today and to share with you a bit of my research work. And I hope it will expand your understanding of Africa and African peoples. So my PhD research is about understanding people-forest relationships through the lens of indigenous knowledge systems. To put it very simply, I seek to understand how communities can leverage on their indigenous knowledge systems to better protect their landscapes as well as to improve their community livelihoods. And one aspect of those people-forest relationships that I have been working on in my research is forests as sites of struggle, forests as sites of anti-colonial struggles. And I want to discuss about the Mau Mau and the fight against British imperialism in Kenya. So the outline of the presentation, I want to begin by looking at the context of this research work. I'll also be giving a historical account of colonialism in Kenya because I want you to really understand what the key issues are or were. The birth of the Mau Mau revolt or revolution, forests and how they sustained these movements known as the Mau Mau, other forms of indigenous knowledge systems and how they played out within the Mau Mau movement, and then conclude. So I'm talking about Kenya, just to put it on the map. It's this country here on the east coast of Africa. And the research site, or my research site, is this large forest landscape here. It's one of the 5 largest forest landscapes in the country, very important economically for the country, important socially, culturally, in terms of ecological restoration, also very critical. And the local name for the landscape is the Nyandarua Ranges. The colonial name for the landscape is the Aberdares Forest. So that's what you're going to see in most of the documentation. The people that I work with and who live around this forest are the Agikoyo people, and those are my partners in this research project. So everything that I'm going to be discussing will be focused on this one particular community. So to begin, I want to situate my interest. How did I come to this kind of research work? Prior to starting my PhD research here at UBC, I had the privilege and pleasure of working with diverse communities across Africa, specifically in 4 countries, on projects that were designed to fuse both natural heritage and cultural heritage, because usually they are presented as different, distinct elements. But most communities look at their landscapes in an integrated whole, not this is nature and this is culture. So that opened my mind in terms of looking at landscapes, or cultural landscapes, as I like to call them, and motivated me to study that kind of area. I'm also hugely inspired by the legacy of Nobel laureate Wangari Maathai, who my other colleague Gloria was speaking about. She won the Nobel Peace Prize for her work with mainly women in restoration of forested landscapes in Kenya, but also linking environmental issues with peace or conflict resolution. And she calls to all Africans to work towards rechiseling the 3-legged African stool. To put it very simply, it's about restoration of African dignity. And you can read about that more in her seminal text, Challenge for Africa, which I think all Africans or people interested in African issues should read. So I work with the Green Belt movement, which she founded, communities that have done a tremendous amount of work in restoring some of these degraded landscapes, and working in different angles in terms of improving community livelihoods, socially, culturally, environmentally, in different dimensions. So to begin, I want to go back to the beginning in terms of situating the colonial discourse with how it is that we came to be colonized. In 1884, 1885, in Berlin, Germany, European powers sat around a table and decided to share what King Leopold of Belgium referred to as the magnificent African cake amongst themselves. So everyone apportioned themselves certain territories. As you can see from the picture, there are no Africans represented in that discussion. So what is now known as Kenya was unfortunate enough to land on the plate of the British. The Agikuyu people resisted colonial domination from the outset. And but eventually they were subdued due to a combination of factors, one of those being famine, disease, reduction in population, as well as the sophistication of the kind of weaponry that they had against what the British had. So by 1920, the Union Jack was flying up in Kenyan airspace, a symbol of domination, control, and oppression. And thus began the civilization of the native with paternalistic authority in Kenya. At the core of the colonial experiment in Kenya was a large land grab, what is known as land alienation. The very best, the very productive land where there is the best weather was alienated for settlement, white settlers. This land was even renamed as White Highlands, exclusive to white people. The only Africans who were there were either slaves or domestic servants, but not growing crops or engaged in any other form of production. So the very identity of the land was contested. So there's the creation of the White Highlands, and then the African population is mobilized into reservations, which is very similar to what Elder Larry Grant was speaking about this morning. And you have millions of people crammed in small spaces, and most of it marginal lands, which they're supposed to make a livelihood out of. And of course, that doesn't go very well. So the goal in Kenya, and those of you who were here when Kofi was speaking yesterday, is that it's different in that the goal was to establish a settler country. Think in terms of Canada, Australia, New Zealand. The goal was to forge white man's country. So white settlement was a key cornerstone of the colonial administration. So the driving forces of this were the colonization of land and labor. I've just mentioned that the Africans that were in the White Highlands were working on these settler farms. So Africans were enslaved on their own land, which had been stolen from them. And labor was colonized in the sense that the British introduced a taxation system, so introduced a monetary system. And since the Gikuyu, for example, did not have a monetary system prior to this, you had to work in a settler farm or a ranch in order to raise money to pay the taxes that are required of you by the colonial government. So again, it's just a build-up of the bitterness and the dispossession that characterized the colonial regime. In World War II, Africans were conscripted to fight against Hitler, who they were made to believe is the dreaded beast that has been set loose and is going to kill all of them. So they fought in World War I, they also fought in World War II. Now in World War II, the British soldiers, after the end of the war, they were given land in Kenya as a reward for their service to the crown. The African soldiers were rewarded with a calabar, they were rewarded with poverty, and they were rewarded with more oppression. And some of the land that was given to the British soldiers belonged to some of these fellow African soldiers, yet when they were fighting in the trenches in Burma and all of these war zones, there was no calabar to distinguish who is going to get shot, who is going to be at the front line, who is not going to be on the front line. So again, another layer of bitterness is added, another layer of dispossession. And this is what backed the Mau Mau revolt, or the Mau Mau revolution. Now the name Mau Mau there are various theories talking about how this movement, or what this name means. According to the Mau Mau themselves, the name of their movement was the Land and Freedom Movement. It was about reclamation of stolen land, and it was about reclamation of freedom, because there was no freedom at all, no freedom of movement, no freedom of growing the crops that you want, no freedom of selling the crops at the price that you want. All kinds of freedoms were denied to the African population. So those were the key issues around which the Mau Mau then started mobilizing. But there are other people who joined the Mau Mau for various other reasons. For example, this elder told me the reason why he decided to go and fight in the forest was because for him, he felt disrespected and humiliated. Because as an African, if he met a white woman, whether it's a girl or an older woman, he had to bow down, he had to take off his hat, he had to put his hands behind his back and call her Mel Saima. If it was a 5-year-old boy, he had to call him Sir. So he felt that his dignity had been stripped, and that was why he decided to go and fight in the forest. So there were many different kinds of issues that made people join the movement or want to fight for against injustice. But the central planks of the movements were land, restoration of land, self-rule, and freedom, restoration of freedom. So the Gikuyu then started mobilizing and turned to their traditions, turned to their indigenous knowledge systems. When all other avenues of trying to protest failed, and they had tried all kinds of options in terms of negotiating with the British, central to this mobilization was oathing, or the taking of an oath. This was a very, very important aspect of the Gikuyu culture. Traditionally, they would take the oath to mobilize solidarity, say in the case of war. But in this case, for the Mau Mau, they radicalized the oath so that they could make sense of their oppression. And the oath was administered widely across the region and across the country. And the oath was embedded in the landscape, given using elements of the landscape. And it became a very strong pillar around which to mobilize for resisting colonial domination. And they said, Torore Nyandarua, which is, let us look to Nyandarua, let us face the mountain. And thousands of people fled into the forest and started now organizing and strategizing on how to fight with the British. I must point out here that Nyandarua, this mountain, this forested mountain, is the second home of Ngai, or God, for the Gikuyu people. So salvation was to come from the mountain, salvation was to come from the second home of Ngai in terms of fighting this very, very formidable enemy. And from these mountains, they launched one of the most protracted and complex and bloodiest war of self-determination in the British Empire. Of course, the British responded, and I just want to show you a short clip of that.
In Nairobi, capital of Kenya, Europeans and Africans still walk the streets in fear of the dreaded Mau Mau. For it is that band of fanatics whose bloody deeds have cast a dark shadow across the face of Kenya. A week ago, the people of Kenya read of the death of Chief Nderi, murdered by terrorists. And now, as they watch the funeral of this wise and peaceful chieftain, they wonder where next will the Mau Mau strike. Troops are in the streets of Nairobi. Sir Evelyn Baring, the governor, salutes the men of the Lancashire Fusiliers who have flown in to help clear his colony of the Mau Mau menace, which has struck fear into Kenya's very heart. Nairobi police have been supplemented by hundreds of civilians, many of them women, to help round up the Mau Mau bandits. Radio-controlled cars with armored vehicles The objective of this secret society is to drive all white men out of Kenya. Not only fanatics fill the ranks of the Mau Mau, many have joined from fear. Day after day, hour after hour, lorries bearing police and troops drive away from the capital and head for the country. Along twisting roads, they travel deeper, ever deeper into the heart of the African jungle. For here, many of the Mau Mau are hiding. Overhead, aircraft join in the search. All who carry the mark of the Mau Mau must be hunted out so that peace may come to this troubled colony.
That was the mobilization against the Mau Mau. And one of the key strategies that was used was a system of mass concentration camps. Those that were arrested by the British and the African collaborators, some of whom you've seen in that video, ended up in these mass concentration camps, which were really chambers of horrors. If you can think of any human rights violation, it happened there. Some of the documented cases include rape of women, including with broken bottles, hot eggs, hot water, stinging nettle, castration of men, public hangings, public floggings, forced labor, etc., etc., etc. And that's another example of this system of camps, which were designed to remove the Mau Mau from the person. It was considered some kind of psychological illness. Some studies were even commissioned to say what kind of psychological illness this is. So this system of camps was to cleanse you, and by the time you reach the last stage, you can then be released back into society as a rehabilitated person. There was never mention of the grievances of the Mau Mau, which is the restoration of land, restoration of freedom, and self-rule. So, so we have the Mau Mau in the forest. That's the militant wing. But then there's also a passive wing outside the forest, which is a large group of people, and you can't tell who is who and who is Mau Mau and who is not Mau Mau. So therefore, to demobilize the passive wing, which was supporting the Mau Mau with food and with intelligence, that is the Mau Mau who are in the forest. So to demobilize this passive wing, again, the British constructed these concentration villages, which, for example, 1.5 million Mau Mau supporters ended up in these concentration villages, according to Elkins. And this would look something like this. It would be just a concentration of many houses together, and there would be a trench around it. And entry and exit were controlled, and there was always a gaze of surveillance around this. So that was the face of the British civilizing mission in Kenya. You ask yourself, at this time, you had the United Nations document on the rights, human rights document, which is a very progressive document, very well drafted. Do those rights not apply to African peoples? Because people are being brutalized by colonialism across the continent, not just in Kenya. But that was the situation. So then, how did the forest support the movement? Because that was the base of the militant wing of the Mau Mau. The first one and the most obvious one is that it was a home. One of the elders told me that in this mountain of Nyandarua we had our homes. Imagine staying there for 6-7 years in the cold, and it gets as cold as 3 degrees sometimes in the rain for 7 years, and moving across this large landscape with airstrikes and on-ground combat with the British, because the British mobilized all their war machinery to fight this war. So that was the first one. Then the second one, the forest as a base for military combat. As I've just said, the British had all the war machinery that you can think of. These people did not have didn't have any serious weapons as such, but the only advantage that they had was a knowledge of the landscape, an intricate knowledge of the landscape. So they would know how to cover their tracks when walking in the forest, either by tying leaves on their legs or changing the patterns of walking such that you cannot trace them, or digging tunnels around river systems to hide, or sheltering themselves around huge trees when there was open fire, or different kinds of strategies, but which are more conceptualized around an understanding of the landscape. Then the forest as a source of food for the movement. When the Mau Mau went to the forest, they did not intend that the forest would be our source of food. They would stay in the forest during the day, but at night they would come out to the reserves and collect food, large quantities of food, which then they would process using various traditional methods, which they would store using various traditional methods for a period of months, and then do the same again to keep the movement going. But then the British sealed off the forest, again by creating a trench around the forest to lock in the Mau Mau. And this again was constructed using forced labor, so a huge trench with spikes in it, such that you cannot cross over, and the other people from the outside cannot cross over. And when they were locked in, then they had to be creative in terms of food sources, so they started growing food in the forest. There's evidence of food production in the forest. There's evidence of now hunting, which was not a key strategy that they were using before in the forest, as well as expanding their food sources to other forest plants, which would normally not feature in the Gikuyu diet, for example, bamboo shoots. And hunger became such a big problem that several of the people surrendered to the other side because they were quite locked in terms of that. Medicine. This is a war zone. People have broken arms, have bullet wounds, have broken legs, all kinds of ailments. So there were designated people whose work was to research about traditional medicine. Which plant are we going to use to treat this kind of ailment? What kind of root is good for this kind of ailment? So there was that whole body of knowledge within the movement to sustain the struggle. And then spiritual nourishment, several trees were selected, and this is a Mugumo tree, which is a sacred tree to the Gikuyu people. So this was a center for prayers as well as for sacrifices. And this again was critical in terms of keeping the movement going. The spiritual angle of it was very, very, very critical. A living heritage of the Mau Mau is this tree here, which is known as the Dedan Kimathi Post Office. It's a Mugumo tree, just the tree that I mentioned now. And in these crevices, each of these crevices was a post office box for the guerrillas. And the letters and communication would be put in each of these boxes, and the movement would know which letter belongs to who. So in essence, this tree has been a silent listener to all the revolutionary conversations about the movement during the Mau Mau. And then Dedan Kimathi, who was the leader of the Mau Mau movement, encouraged all the guerrillas to establish a kind of documentation system of all the activities and establish an archive in the forest. So they would collect all this information and then dig a hole in the forest and cover it up. And there were letters and communiques, all kinds of material of Mau Mau heritage in that. Children were very instrumental in the Mau Mau. They were used to transmit messages from the forest and with the passive wing, and they would be riding these hoops and would bypass the British because the British would not suspect them of being Mau Mau. But messages were transmitted up to 300, 400 kilometers through this kind of system of involving the children. And then the use of songs and proverbs in the Mau Mau. Remember, this is a culture without a written, they don't have a writing culture, and most people cannot read and write. So how do you transmit the messages across the population and code them in song? Emotive songs of protest, some of them which are still sung today, are coded with these messages, and the message spreads to a wide range One of the strategies that they used around song is to craft the songs around Christian songs or hymns, such that when the British hear them singing, it will sound just like any other Christian hymn. Oh, these people are really religious, they're good Christians. But those songs have strong, powerful messages that are being communicated across the landscape. Proverbs, and then of course, coded language with deep, complex metaphorical meanings were used in terms of transmitting messages. So as one of the elders told me, we can say that this war was fought with a lot of wisdom. And this was wisdom that was encoded in indigenous knowledge systems. And just to highlight that the Mau Mau case is quite interesting to me because it's one of the cases that I know of where academic research has delivered justice to the oppressed. The Mau Mau remained banned in Kenya up to 2003, even in the post-independence period. That's another story altogether. But the fact that they were banned, they didn't have an opening in which to air their grievances. People still today live with bullets in their bodies, lodged in their bodies, or broken arms, or different kinds of torture resulted to various kinds of issues. So once it became unbanned, they launched a case with against the British. And of course, it was dismissed, and for 10 years the case just kept going on and on. Some of those who started the case died before the judgment was passed. But then academics got involved, specifically historians, to kind of support the case and unpack the deadlocks that the case had faced. And through this academic research, they revealed a very expansive cover-up. By the time the British were leaving Kenya, billows of smoke were rising up in the air when they were destroying evidence. Any incriminating evidence of torture was destroyed, and the rest of the materials were taken to Britain. So that academic research was able to reveal that, and these are some of the faces of these elders who had to keep going back and forth to London when this case was being had. And in 2013, they reached a settlement, which was groundbreaking in itself because this is the first time a colony has sued a former colonial power and won. So they got a settlement of £20 million for 5,228 persons. That obviously is not the total amount of the total number of the Mau Mau adherents, but it's a testament of justice delivered and people pursuing justice for that matter. Tied to this, which has been an ongoing battle, is the remains of Field Marshal Dedan Kimathi, the leader of the Mau Mau movement. He was captured in 1956 and executed in 1957. The British, it's argued or believed that he was buried in a mass grave. The wife, Mukami, here, has been, and also Mau Mau adherents and the general public has been asking for the British to show where he was buried so that they can exhume his body and give him a hero's burial that he deserves. The British would not budge, and to date, the struggle still continues. So, to me, he remains a hero in the sense that he organized an indigenous movement. There was no support whatsoever from outside for the Mau Mau. It was all endogenous, if I can borrow that word. And so I add him to my pantheon of heroes. So Dedan Kimathi, Odora Hoppers, Thomas Sankara, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, Chinua Achebe, Chilisa Bagele, Wangari Maathai. All of these people have something in common. They are strong advocates for indigenous knowledge systems. They are strong advocates of the argument that it's only through engaging with indigenous knowledge knowledge systems that Africans can restore their dignity and pride as human beings. So in conclusion, what I've been trying to show here is the manifestation of people-forest relationships within very complex landscapes. That forests are just not about provision of water or provision of firewood. There are the deeper cultural meanings and historical meanings associated with forests for communities. Because the communities told me and emphasized, especially the elders, that Wiyadi Toriterengelaka, that is, our independence was derived from the forest. And for me, engaging with indigenous knowledge systems is a struggle against forgetting. It's a struggle against forgetting that has enveloped the African continent, a struggle against forgetting that has been institutionalized in the quest for development and modernity. It's a struggle in terms of memorializing the landscape and putting people back in their landscapes, because conservation has also been very, very hostile to communities in terms of accessing their landscapes. And it's also, in this case, a struggle really of seizing the authenticity of the real and also of immortalizing this glorious struggle which the Mau Mau represented, the struggle or the quest for justice and the quest for freedom. Iboya, asanteni, thank you so much.